This past Christmas, Jessica Ripka's brother-in-law died unexpectedly in his own bed. He was only 51 and never let on to being unwell in any significant way. And on a Monday, less than 6 months later, his wife, Jessica's sister, died too. A week after her sister's death, Jessica turned 40. And a week after that, her life as an unwed, childless woman in Los Angeles changed course forever as she stood in a courthouse in Carroll County, Maryland, gaining emergency temporary custody of her sister and brother-in-law's 3 children, aged 6, 9, and 11. Jessica writes about her experience in her essay, Cicada Season, explaining that her sister's family had been uninsured for more than 5 years and lived in poverty. They had relied on miraculous healing and homeopathic remedies for medical care and blamed Obama for everything else. As her sister got sicker, she had gone to an ER, but refused to wear the mandated mask in the hospital and chose to return home instead, not knowing that she had less than 2 weeks to live. Neither she nor her husband died of COVID, but in a way, they were COVID-related deaths. Jessica recounts being raised in that Pentecostal family, getting in trouble in the 3rd grade for saying that non-Christian kids were going to hell, and getting taken out of school on Halloween. Jessica had finally found distance and a healthy boundary from the faith that had hurt her so as a young person. She had been living in California, sought therapy to sort out her own separation from these beliefs and that history. And then, when her sister and brother-in-law died, found herself deeply bound once again to her family, who had clung so tightly to these beliefs. Jessica writes that she spent the entire pandemic painstakingly avoiding people like this. And now, she is legally bound to parenting them. I can tell God doesn't want us to wear masks, the 9-year-old told her recently in the car, because he rewarded mommy with heaven for not wearing hers. The body has all it needs to fend off infection, is a mantra the kids still proclaim regularly, a belief echoed throughout the pages of their mother's journals. They argue about the non-existence of the coronavirus, the dark plot to control America through vaccines, the ineffectiveness of masks. Their fundamentalist faith at a young age is still taking shape, but the talking points are already in place. When their father died, their mother had them all try to raise him from the dead for a full 12 hours before calling the authorities. And then when she fell ill, she reached out to a place called the Divine Healing Institute asking for prayer. Her very last email to them was confirming that she was in the midst of a miraculous improvement. And 4 days later, she was gone. The deaths haven't cast any doubt in the children's minds about what they believe. If anything, they're digging their heels in even more. "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you," Ruth declares to Naomi. Ruth, a Moabite, supposedly a people who were bitter enemies of the Israelites, refuses to let Naomi return alone to her homeland, refuses to let her mother-in-law slip easily into isolation following tragedy and trauma. Now, I don't know anyone who would really want to live with their mother-in-law, no offense to my own, especially without their spouse around. And here is Ruth stubbornly proclaiming that she will live into the meaning of her name, friend. 5 weeks ago, when we started this sermon series, I asked, "Who are your people?" We explored that we would not only come from places, but also from relationships, from ancestors who paved the way for our existence, and from people who have shaped us so deeply that they have changed who we are. As we wrap up this series today and ask, where do we go from here? We come full circle, in a way. We hope that having learned about one another, about our hurts and needs, our histories and relationships, we have deepened the web of connection between us, such that your people have become our people, your hurts, our hurts, your needs, our needs. As Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King so famously said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. In other words, I don't know where we go from here, other than that we go there together. And that's all well and good when you can choose who you are together with. When you can choose a spouse, a friend, a town to live in, a church to attend. But the trouble is we cannot actually choose who we are bound up with. We can pretend that chosen family is all that matters, that if we surround ourselves with like-minded people, if we have a pod of people who follow the same COVID safety as us, if our town has a high vaccination rate, that we can somehow insulate ourselves from our collective failures. The reality is that we live in an age where we literally breathe air polluted by forest fires thousands of miles away. Strains of virus originating in faraway lands reach our own community within weeks. And sometimes the very people we seek to distance ourselves from can have as much effect on our lives as those whom we choose for closeness. As we reflect on the last year and a half and watch the rising rates of infection now with the Delta variant, surely we know more clearly now than ever that there is no going back, that we are irrevocably connected, not just to those we know, but to those we do not. We cannot just cordon off poor parts of the world without access to vaccines, just as we cannot pretend that we can separate those who are vaccinated from those who are unvaccinated. And as climate change accelerates, we cannot pretend that some people won't be affected, that even wealth or region would protect us from an uncertain and difficult future. There's no going back, and there's no way forward except together. As Ruth declares to Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. And this declaration gets glorified in wedding ceremonies frequently. But its context in our story today is much more grim. Its context is the grief of widows who have lost their spouses and are stuck with each other. They both face ostracism, poverty, and perhaps death if they were to set out alone. But to be clear, sticking together seals a fate just as uncertain. Wherever they go, whichever land they choose, one of them will be an outsider. And wherever they go, odds are someone will have a problem with them being together. Wherever they go, they will be reminded by the other's presence of their very grief and loss. And yet, by choosing to stay together, they reclaim that power. In choosing to stay together, they are saying that they will not forget what they have been through, who they have lost along the way. In choosing to stay together, they are saying that whatever happens, at least they won't bear it alone. Their journey began in a time when Bethlehem was facing famine, and they will return to the place of bread. Literally, what Bethlehem means, the place of bread, will be at a time of abundance, the beginning of the barley harvest. Their journey epitomizes the unexpected and inescapable interconnectedness of humanity, and the beautiful abundance and new life that can emerge from stubborn togetherness. As we sort out where we go from here, as a nation, a community, or a church, we would do well to humbly remember the trauma and tragedy that each one of us has faced, that has turned many a heart from Naomi, meaning pleasant, to Mara, bitter. And to know that while Ruth's words of stubborn togetherness are prophetic and admirable, they're also just the truth. We are all bound up together in this inescapable web of mutuality. Like Jessica, we are faced with the task of caring for those who most challenge us. Living into the reality of our interconnectedness is an act of tenacious faith. Jessica, against her personal desires, finds herself buying a suburban home for her mother and nieces and nephews to live in, signing a 30-year mortgage into a life that she never imagined. Day by day, she writes that the kids have begun to adapt to a routine of vitamins and bedtime, putting on the shelf for now arguments about church and vaccines. Where do we go from here? Forward, together. May our relationships, across difference and difficulty, our relationships of vulnerability and honesty, lead us into the abundance of grace that God promises someday. May it be so.